In the unforgiving world of the Silver Claw Pack, an Omega is less than nothing until she becomes everything. When Jessica Reed decided to rid the manor of its filth by pushing a pregnant maid down the grand staircase, she believed she was simply maintaining order. She believed the only witnesses were servants too terrified to speak. She miscalculated fatally. From the darkness of the upper mezzanine, the most dangerous alpha on the continent watched his mate's body fold protectively around their unborn child as she fell. For 6 months, Damon Blackwood had torn apart the realm searching for the woman who saved his life and stole his heart. Now, as champagne glasses shattered from the force of his rage, the Reed family was about to learn a brutal truth. For every stair Serafina tumbled, they would lose something irreplaceable. This is the story of how one push toppled a dynasty. The air in Crestview Manor's ballroom carried the scent of imported lilies and beeswax polish, undercut by something sharper, the metallic tang of fear that preceded important gatherings. For Serafina, all of it blended into a nauseating fog that made her grip the mahogany banister harder, her knuckles bloodless as she worked her polishing cloth in small, desperate circles. The grand staircase was the manor's crown jewel, sweeping marble imported from Italian quarries, gold leaf railings that caught candlelight like captured sunlight, rising in an elegant curve to the VIP mezzanine where tonight's true power would observe the festivities below. Serafina paused mid-stroke, pressing one hand briefly to her mouth as another wave of nausea rolled through her. For months. She was 4 months along, and while the shapeless emerald green tunic she wore, 2 sizes too large and stained at the hem, concealed the small swell of her belly from casual observation, she knew time was running out. 22 years old, Omega status, no family name in the pack registry, no mate bond officially recorded. According to every document that mattered, Serafina was nobody carrying nobody's child. You missed a section, Stray. The voice sliced through her concentration like a blade, silk-wrapped steel, dripping with the kind of venom that came from a lifetime of never hearing the word no. Serafina didn't need to raise her eyes to identify the speaker. Jessica Reed's presence was as unmistakable as her cruelty. "I apologize, Miss Jessica," Serafina whispered, immediately resuming her work with renewed vigor. "I'll correct it now." "You certainly will." Jessica's footsteps clicked closer, each strike of her crimson stilettos against marble a tiny declaration of dominance. She wore a gown tonight that shimmered like fresh blood designer label, probably worth more than Serafina would see in 5 years of servitude. At her side stood Brad, the Gamma's son, whose smirk was as practiced as his sycophancy. "Father is hosting Alpha King Damon Blackwood tonight," Jessica continued, her tone suggesting she was explaining something to a particularly slow child. "Everything must be absolutely flawless. That means we cannot have the staff looking like, well, like you." Brad leaned in, making an exaggerated show of sniffing the air. "She smells off, Jess. Sour. Like milk that's gone bad." Serafina flinched involuntarily. Omegas naturally had fainter scents than higher-ranking wolves, but pregnancy transformed body chemistry in distinctive ways, sweetening it, enriching it, broadcasting biological signals meant to invoke protection instincts. But to Jessica and Brad, anything associated with Serafina was simply another opportunity for disgust. "Perhaps she's finally rotting from within," Jessica said with a laugh that held no warmth. In one deliberate motion, she reached out and knocked over the bucket of dirty water Serafina had positioned against the wall. Splash! Murky liquid spread across pristine marble and soaked through the hem of Serafina's tunic, shocking cold against her legs. "Oops." Jessica's expression showed not even a ghost of apology. Clean that immediately. Use your hands. I won't risk water spots on the stone before King Damon arrives. Serafina bit down on the inside of her cheek until she tasted copper. Don't react. Don't give them the satisfaction. Think of the baby. Think of the tiny heartbeat fluttering inside you like a trapped bird. Yes, Miss Jessica. She dropped to her knees without hesitation, the cold water seeping through fabric as she began sopping up the mess with her polishing cloth, her movements mechanical. Pathetic, Brad muttered, checking the expensive watch on his wrist. Come on, babe. Your styling team is waiting upstairs. You want to look perfect when the king arrives. Word is he's actively searching for a queen. Jessica preened visibly, flipping blonde hair over her shoulder with practiced elegance. Please. Once Alpha Damon sees me, he won't spare a glance for anyone else. I'm the highest-ranking female of breeding age in the entire region. It's practically political destiny. She stepped over Serafina's hands, her heel coming within a hair's breadth of crushing Serafina's fingers against the floor. Stay invisible tonight, Serafina. If the Alpha King sees an Omega like you, he might conclude our pack is weak, desperate. And if you embarrass me in front of him... Jessica's voice dropped to something colder. I'll have you thrown to the rogues beyond the border before the sun rises. Understood. Their laughter echoed off the high ceilings as they walked away, fading up the stairs toward the private suites. Serafina remained motionless on the wet floor, trembling despite herself. She placed one protective hand over her stomach, fingers splayed across fabric. They spoke of Alpha King Damon Blackwood like he was a prize to be claimed, the ruthless warlord, the billionaire who controlled half the continent's territory, the alpha of all alphas. They feared his reputation. They hungered for his power. But they didn't know him. Serafina closed her eyes, and a single tear traced down her cheek. She knew him. Not as the king, but as Damon, the wounded stranger she'd found bleeding in the border woods 6 months ago during a supply run. She had hidden him in an abandoned hunting cabin during a 3-day blizzard, nursed him back from the edge of death while he lay delirious with infection, his scent deliberately masked, his rank concealed. They had shared body heat for survival, whispered confessions in the dark, and one night of soul-binding passion that had felt like destiny claiming what was always meant to be. He had promised to return for her. He had pressed a simple silver ring into her palm, which now hung on a chain buried beneath her tunic, resting against her heart, and disappeared before the snow melted. 6 months of silence. 6 months of waiting. 6 months of wondering if she'd imagined the way he'd looked at her like she was the only thing in the world worth saving. And now he was coming here not as her lover, but as the king. But before we dive in, I need to ask you something that truly matters to me. If you've enjoyed my stories before, or if you're here hoping this one will move you, please don't leave without subscribing. Without your subscription, YouTube buries everything I create. The people searching for stories that make them feel something, stories about resilience, love, impossible choices, they'll never find them. Because the algorithm decided I wasn't worth showing. I'm not asking for money. Just 30 seconds to hit that subscribe button so others can discover these stories too. I pour everything I have into every word, every character, every chapter. And knowing I could reach someone who desperately needs it but won't because you didn't click, that genuinely breaks my heart. Please subscribe. It costs you nothing, but to me, it means someone believes these stories matter. Now, let's continue. Serafina's fingers had gone numb an hour ago, but she kept scrubbing. The VIP staircase demanded perfection, every spindle of the gold leaf railing polished until it caught candlelight like trapped sunbeams, every marble step buffed to a mirror shine that would reflect the Alpha King's face when he ascended tonight. If he ascended. if he even glanced in her direction. She pressed her free hand against her lower abdomen, feeling the subtle swell beneath the oversized emerald tunic. For months meant the bump was still small enough to hide under shapeless fabric, but her body was changing in ways she couldn't control. The morning sickness that struck at random hours. The way her scent had shifted from the barely there omega musk to something sweeter, richer. She'd started wearing the cook's discarded lavender sachets tucked into her sleeves, hoping the dried flowers would mask what her biology was screaming to anyone with a sensitive nose. The baby moved sometimes now, tiny flutters like butterfly wings against her ribs. Each time it happened, Serafina had to fight the urge to smile, to cradle her stomach, to do anything that might draw attention. A door slammed somewhere above, and she heard Jessica's shrill laughter echoing through the manor's upper halls. Serafina's shoulders tensed instinctively. She worked faster, her cloth moving in tight circles over the 10th step, then the 11th. Stay invisible. Finish before the guests arrive. Get back to the scullery where omegas belonged. The silver ring beneath her tunic shifted against her skin, still warm from her body heat. She'd worn it on a chain every day since he'd left it in her palm 6 months ago, his fever-bright eyes holding hers as he'd whispered promises she'd been foolish enough to believe. Damon. Not the king, just Damon, bleeding and half dead in her arms, human enough to need her. Tonight he would walk through those doors as something else entirely. Untouchable. Surrounded by power players who would bow and scrape for his attention while she scrubbed floors in the shadows. Jessica would preen in her blood-red gown. Brad would puff his chest and talk of alliances. And Serafina would stay hidden, protecting the one secret that could either save her or destroy her completely, the fact that the life growing inside her carried royal blood, even if its father had forgotten the woman who'd given him everything. The convoy arrived precisely at dusk, 3 black armored vehicles that moved through the manor gates like predators stalking prey. Serafina heard the commotion from the service hallway where she'd been banished, heard Jessica's delighted squeal and the sudden scramble of footsteps as every high-ranking wolf in the building rushed to position themselves for the king's entrance. She should have stayed hidden. Should have pressed herself into the shadows of the scullery and waited for the night to pass. But something pulled at her chest, a magnetic tug she couldn't name, couldn't resist. Her feet moved on their own, carrying her to the servants' alcove near the ballroom entrance, where she could see without being seen. And then he walked in. Damon Blackwood stood in the doorway like a storm given human form. He wore black tactical armor that looked medieval and modern all at once, a cape of dark fur across his shoulders that made him seem even more massive than she remembered. His dark hair was longer now, pulled back severely from a face that could have been carved from granite, all sharp angles and cold authority. This wasn't the fevered man who'd clutched her hand in the cabin. This was the Alpha King, and he looked like he could tear the world apart with his bare hands. Beta Marcus rushed forward with Jessica at his side, both bowing deeply. Alpha King Blackwood, welcome to Crestview Manor. We are honored. Damon's head snapped up mid-sentence, his entire body going rigid. His nostrils flared as he scented the air, and Serafina watched his eyes, those dark, dangerous eyes she'd memorized in firelight, begin to glow with an amber light that made every wolf in the room take an instinctive step back. The mate bond hit him like a physical blow. She saw it in the way his hand flew to his chest, the way his breath caught audibly. His gaze swept the ballroom with predatory focus, searching, desperate, nearly feral with recognition. Where is she? His voice was barely human, more growl than words. The windows rattled in their frames from the force of his power flooding the room. Where is my mate? Marcus stammered, confused. Jessica's face drained of color. Brad looked between them, bewildered. But Serafina, hidden in her alcove with one hand pressed protectively over her stomach, felt the answering pull in her own chest, the bond she'd tried to bury roaring back to life with devastating certainty. He'd come back. After 6 months of silence, he'd finally come back. And he was looking for her. Jessica recovered first, her practiced smile sliding back into place like a mask. Alpha King, I'm certain there's been some mistake. There are no mated females in our pack who would be suitable for someone of your. I will find her myself. Damon's voice was lethal silk as he moved past Marcus without acknowledgement, his gaze scanning the ballroom with an intensity that made lesser wolves drop their eyes. He moved like a hunter tracking scent, his entire focus narrowed to that singular purpose. Jessica's smile cracked at the edges. She'd spent 3 hours with stylists, had her gown fitted twice, had practiced her curtsy and rehearsed conversation topics that would showcase her political acumen. And he hadn't even looked at her. Not once. Her gaze followed his trajectory across the room, and that's when she saw it, a flash of emerald green in the servants' alcove near the kitchen entrance. Serafina, pressed against the wall like she was trying to disappear into the stone itself, one hand clutched over her stomach, her face pale and her eyes locked on the king with an expression that made Jessica's blood boil. Recognition. Longing. Connection. That little whore, Jessica hissed under her breath. Brad followed her stare, his expression twisting with disgust. You think the stray knows him? I think she's about to ruin everything. Jessica's fingers curled into fists, her perfectly manicured nails digging crescents into her palms. 6 months ago, Serafina had disappeared for 3 days during that border blizzard. She'd claimed she'd gotten lost on a supply run, had returned with frostbite and a fever. But what if? The pieces clicked together with sickening clarity. The pregnancy. The secret Serafina had been hiding. The way she touched that chain around her neck when she thought no one was watching. She's carrying his bastard, Jessica breathed, and the words tasted like poison. That's why he's here. That Omega trash seduced the Alpha King. Damon was moving toward the alcove now, shouldering past confused nobles who scattered like leaves before a storm. In seconds, he would reach her. He would claim her. And Jessica's entire future, her mother's ambitions, her father's political maneuvering, everything she'd been promised since birth, would crumble to dust. No, Jessica said coldly, lifting the hem of her crimson gown. Absolutely not. She moved with purpose toward the grand staircase, her heels clicking like a countdown. If she couldn't have the king's attention through charm, she'd have it through chaos. And if that meant making an example of the pregnant Omega who dared to rise above her station, then so be it. Serafina needed to be reminded exactly where trash belonged and how far it could fall. Jessica found Serafina at the service landing, the narrow platform halfway up the grand staircase, where servants could access the VIP level without being seen. Serafina's heart hammered against her ribs as she watched Jessica approach, each click of those crimson heels a countdown to something terrible. You, Jessica hissed, her beautiful face contorted with rage. What did you do to him? Miss Jessica, I don't. Don't lie to me. Jessica's hand shot out, gripping Serafina's arm hard enough to bruise. The Alpha King is looking for you. For a pregnant Omega slut who should be grateful I haven't thrown her out already. Her eyes dropped to Serafina's stomach, and something vicious flickered across her features. Is it his? Did you trick him somehow? Serafina tried to pull away, but Jessica's grip tightened. Please, I need to go to him. You need to disappear. Jessica's voice dropped to something cold and final. You're a stain on this pack, Serafina. A disease. And I'm going to cleanse us of your filth right now. It happened so fast. Jessica's hands planted against Seraphina's shoulders and shoved hard. Seraphina's feet left the platform, her body pitching backward into empty air. She had one crystalline moment of terror before instinct took over. She curled herself into a protective ball, arms wrapped around her stomach, trying to shield the life inside her as she tumbled down the marble stairs. Pain exploded through her shoulder, her hip, her back. Each impact drove the air from her lungs. And then the world shattered. A roar tore through the manor, primal, inhuman, the sound of a predator whose mate was being killed. Every champagne glass in the ballroom exploded simultaneously, raining crystal like deadly snow. The chandeliers swung violently. Windows cracked in their frames. Damon Blackwood's aura hit the room like a shockwave, so dense with rage that wolves dropped to their knees, gasping. He moved faster than physics should allow, his cape streaming behind him as he vaulted over the banister and caught Seraphina's falling body 3 steps from the bottom. His arms locked around her with desperate gentleness, even as his eyes burned amber fire. "Seraphina," he breathed, his voice breaking. "I've got you. I've got you." Then he looked up at Jessica, still standing frozen on the service landing, and his expression promised death. "If she dies," Damon said, each word carved from ice and fury, "everyone in this room dies with her." His hand shot out, and Beta Marcus flew backward, slamming into the wall with bone-cracking force. Blood bloomed across Damon's white dress shirt where Seraphina's head rested against his chest, a spreading crimson stain that matched Jessica's gown. He cradled her like she was made of glass and starlight, one arm beneath her knees, the other supporting her shoulders as he rose to his full height. "Damon," Seraphina whispered, her voice thin with pain. Her hand clutched weakly at his armor. "The baby? Shoot, my love. Save your strength." His voice was gentle for her, lethal for everyone else. "Silas, get the chopper ready now. We're going to the Royal Trauma Unit." A massive man in tactical gear appeared from the entry, already speaking rapidly into a comm device. The sound of helicopter rotors thrummed to life outside. Beta Marcus pushed himself up from the floor, blood trickling from his mouth. "Alpha King, surely we can handle this here. Our pack doctor." Damon's head snapped toward him with predatory speed. "Your pack doctor?" His laugh was devoid of humor. "You mean the same medical staff that's been caring for my mate for 6 months? The same staff that let her work on her knees while pregnant with the royal heir." He took a step toward Marcus, and the beta scrambled backward. "You let her starve. You let her sleep in servants' quarters. You let your daughter torture her while my child grew in her womb." "We didn't know." Marcus gasped. "We had no idea she was." "You didn't ask." Damon's eyes flared brighter. "You saw a pregnant Omega and treated her like garbage because you could. Because in your pathetic hierarchy, she was invisible." Seraphina made a small sound of pain, and Damon's attention immediately returned to her. His expression softened, became almost human again. "I'm here now, Wildflower. I'm so sorry it took me so long." He strode toward the manor entrance, but Marcus made the fatal mistake of reaching out, trying to grasp Damon's arm. "Alpha King, please, let us explain." Damon's free hand shot out and closed around Marcus's throat, lifting the beta off his feet with casual, terrifying strength. "You threw away 6 months of letters. 6 months of gold I sent to care for her. You stole from your king and brutalized his mate." His grip tightened until Marcus's face turned purple. "Give me one reason I shouldn't crush your windpipe right now." "Damon," Seraphina breathed. "Please. The baby needs you." His hand opened instantly. Marcus crumpled to the floor, gasping. Damon carried Serafina into the night without looking back, leaving chaos and broken wolves in his wake. The Royal Trauma Unit existed for one purpose: to keep the most important wolves in the realm alive. Serafina had never imagined she'd see the inside of it, much less be rushed through its pristine corridors on a gurney while the Alpha King held her hand and refused to let go. BP dropping, a nurse called out. Possible placental abruption. We need to get her into surgery now. No. Damon's voice stopped the entire medical team in their tracks. No surgery without my presence. Dr. Chin, the head surgeon, stepped forward, a small woman with steel in her eyes who apparently feared neither kings nor gods. Alpha Blackwood, with all due respect, if we don't operate immediately, we could lose both of them. You cannot be in the hospital protocol. I am the protocol. Damon's aura pulsed once, making the fluorescent lights flicker. She wakes up alone in a strange place after being pushed downstairs by people she trusted. She'll panic. The stress could kill our child faster than any abruption. I stay. Dr. Chen studied him for a long moment, then nodded curtly. Scrub in. Touch nothing. If you interfere with my team, I'll have security remove you, king or not. The surgical theater was all bright lights and cold steel. Serafina drifted in and out of consciousness, her hand searching blindly until it found Damon's. He'd positioned himself at her head, fully gowned and masked, whispering constantly against her ear. Stay with me, Wildflower. Remember the cabin? Remember how you wouldn't let me die even when I begged you to end the pain? I need that strength now. Our baby needs it. I'm trying, she breathed, tears sliding down her temples. Damon, I'm so scared. I know, my love. His thumb traced circles on her palm. But you're the strongest person I've ever met. You survived 6 months thinking I'd abandoned you. You survived their cruelty. You're going to survive this. Dr. Chen's voice cut through the intimacy. Fetal heartbeat detected. It's weak but steady. Proceeding with stabilization. Time became elastic, stretching and compressing. Serafina felt hands on her abdomen, pressure, tugging. But through it all, Damon's voice anchored her to consciousness, to hope. The baby's holding on, Dr. Chen announced finally. Heartbeat strengthening. No rupture detected, just severe bruising to the uterine wall. She was lucky. The way she curled herself probably saved the pregnancy. Damon's forehead dropped against Serafina's, his shoulders shaking with relief. You hear that, Wildflower? You saved our child. Silas kicked down the door to Beta Marcus's private office at 3 a.m. He didn't bother with subtlety. The king had given him carte blanche to tear the manor apart until he found answers, and Silas took his orders seriously. The office reeked of expensive cigars and desperation. Marcus himself sat in the corner, guarded by 2 of Damon's enforcers, his face a mottled canvas of bruises. Jessica had been locked in a separate room, her screaming having finally subsided into bitter sobbing. Start talking, Silas growled, yanking open desk drawers and dumping their contents onto the Persian rug. The king sent letters. Gold shipments. Where are they? I don't know what you're. Silas slammed his fist on the mahogany desk, cracking it down the middle. Your king has been searching for his mate for 6 months. He sent correspondence to every pack in the region. Money to ensure she was cared for if found. That gold never reached her. Those letters never reached her. So either you're incompetent or you're a thief. Which is it? Marcus's face crumbled. The safe. Behind the portrait. Silas ripped the painting, some pretentious ancestor, off the wall. The safe was military grade, but he had the tools. 3 minutes later, it swung open. Inside was a treasure trove of betrayal. Sealed envelopes, dozens of them, each bearing the royal crest in crimson wax. Silas tore one open, his eyes scanning the elegant script. To the Alpha of Silver Claw Pack, I seek a woman, approximately 22 years of age, red hair, emerald eyes, likely presenting as Omega. She saved my life. If she resides within your territory, please ensure her comfort and safety. Enclosed, 50,000 gold marks for her immediate care. More will follow. Damon Blackwood, Alpha King. Silas's jaw clenched. He opened another letter, then another. Each one more desperate than the last. Each one accompanied by bank transfer receipts showing astronomical sums. The final letter was dated 2 weeks ago. I am coming myself. If she is found harmed, there will be no mercy. You read these, Silas said quietly, his voice more terrifying for its calm. You knew exactly who she was. You took the king's gold and locked her in a basement. You let your daughter torture the future queen while you spent the royal treasury on your pathetic social climbing. Marcus was weeping now. We thought if we kept her hidden, eventually he'd give up. Choose someone else. Someone like Jessica. We could align our families, gain power. You gambled with the king's mate. Silas gathered the letters with careful hands. You're going to. The Citadel's dungeons were carved from mountain stone 2 centuries ago, designed to hold the realm's most dangerous criminals. Jessica Reed had never imagined she'd see them from the inside, much less be dragged down their torchlit corridors in chains. Please, she sobbed as the guards hauled her past cell after cell of hollow-eyed prisoners. I didn't mean to hurt her. It was an accident. Please, I'll apologize. I'll beg for forgiveness. Save your breath, the guard said flatly. The king isn't interested in apologies. They threw her into a cell that stank of mildew and despair. The door clanged shut with a finality that made her stomach drop. Through the bars, she could see her father in the cell across from hers, his expensive suit torn and filthy, his face aged 10 years in a single night. Father, Jessica whimpered. Do something. You're the beta. You have connections. I have nothing. Marcus's voice was hollow. We have nothing. Everything's been seized. The manor, the accounts, the businesses. It's all gone. Footsteps echoed down the corridor. Damon Blackwood emerged from the shadows like vengeance itself, still wearing the blood-stained shirt from earlier. He stopped between their cells, his expression carved from ice. Comfortable? He asked conversationally. Jessica rushed to the bars. Alpha King, I'm so sorry. I was jealous, stupid. But I never meant. You pushed my pregnant mate down a marble staircase. His voice could have frozen fire. You nearly killed her. You nearly killed my child. Accident implies lack of intent. We both know that's a lie. He turned to Marcus. You stole from me. 6 months of gold meant to care for Serafina, embezzled and spent on parties, clothes, maintaining your pathetic illusion of status. You kept her in a coal cellar while you wore custom suits bought with my money. We'll pay it back, Marcus gasped. Every coin. With interest. With what? Damon's laugh was cruel. You're penniless. I've stripped your titles, dissolved your bloodlines, claimed to beta status, and blacklisted your family name across every pack on the continent. Your sister has disowned you. Your allies pretend they never knew you. You are nothing. Jessica's legs gave out. She collapsed against the stone floor. You'll stay here, Damon continued softly, for the rest of your miserable lives. Every day, you'll wake up and remember the woman you brutalized. And every day, you'll know she's sleeping in silk sheets as my queen while you rot in darkness. That's your ruin. Slow. Permanent. Deserved. He walked away without another word, leaving their desperate pleas echoing uselessly against stone walls. Wish he'd killed you tonight. Serafina woke to softness, a sensation so foreign after months of thin mattresses and stone floors that for a moment she thought she was dreaming. Her eyes fluttered open to find herself in a massive bed draped in midnight blue silk, morning light filtering through floor-to-ceiling windows that overlooked a mountain range. Easy. Damon's voice came from beside the bed, where he sat in a chair pulled close, his hand wrapped around hers. He looked exhausted, dark circles beneath his eyes, his hair disheveled from running his fingers through it. He was still wearing that blood-stained shirt. Her blood. Don't move too quickly. Dr. Chen wants you on bed rest for at least a week. The baby? Serafina's free hand flew to her stomach, panic spiking through her. Alive. His voice cracked with emotion. Strong. Fighting like their mother. He shifted closer, his thumb tracing circles on her palm. Dr. Chen has a fetal monitor. Would you like to hear? Tears spilled down Serafina's cheeks as she nodded. Damon pressed a button on the bedside panel. Dr. Chen appeared within minutes, wheeling in the ultrasound equipment with brisk efficiency. Good to see you awake, she said warmly. Let's check on your little warrior. The gel was cold against Serafina's exposed abdomen. Dr. Chen moved the wand carefully, her eyes on the screen. And then, thump-thump, thump-thump, thump-thump. Fast and steady, like a galloping horse. Like a promise. Like hope-given sound. Damon made a noise somewhere between a laugh and a sob. His hand tightened on Serafina's as he stared at the monitor, watching the tiny fluttering movement on the screen, their child's heart, beating against impossible odds. That's our baby, Serafina whispered. That's our baby, Damon echoed, his voice thick. He leaned down, pressing his forehead to hers. 6 months I searched for you. 6 months of tearing apart the continent, following every rumor, every whisper. I thought I'd lost you forever. Thought maybe you'd decided I wasn't worth waiting for. I waited every day, she said softly. Even when they told me you'd forgotten me. Even when they said I was delusional for believing an alpha could want an omega. I knew you'd come back. Always. He kissed her forehead, her cheeks, the tip of her nose. I will always come back for you. You're my mate. My queen. The mother of my child. His hand slid down to rest on her stomach, covering hers. Our family. On the monitor, their baby's heart continued its steady rhythm, the sound of life, of survival, of a future they'd almost lost. Our family, Serafina agreed, finally allowing herself to believe it. 3 weeks later, Serafina stood at the top of the grand staircase in Crestview Manor, the same staircase she'd once scrubbed on her knees, the same landing where Jessica had pushed her toward death. But now she wore a gown of deep emerald silk that complemented her red hair and made her pregnancy glow rather than hide. A crown of silver and diamonds rested on her head, feeling both foreign and somehow right. Damon stood beside her, devastating in his formal black armor, his hand possessively wrapped around her waist. Below them, the entire Silver Claw pack had been assembled in the ballroom by royal decree, hundreds of wolves who'd pretended she didn't exist now forced to witness her ascension. Citizens of Silver Claw, Damon's voice carried through the hall with absolute authority. You stand before Serafina Blackwood, my mate, your queen, and the mother of the royal heir. You will show her the respect you failed to give her before. Silas stepped forward, unrolling an official proclamation. By order of the Alpha King, the Silver Claw Pack is hereby placed under direct royal supervision. A new beta will be appointed. All pack members are required to formally acknowledge Queen Serafina's authority. Serafina watched faces in the crowd. Some showed genuine remorse, others barely concealed resentment. Many looked terrified. She recognized the cook who'd sometimes slipped her extra bread, the groundskeeper who'd nodded kindly when others ignored her. But she also saw the servants who'd spat near her feet, the guards who'd laughed at Jessica's cruelty, the wolves who'd known she was suffering and done nothing. "Kneel," Damon commanded. The sound of hundreds of wolves dropping to their knees echoed through the ballroom. Brad was there, his face pale with humiliation. Jessica's mother, weeping quietly. Even the pack elders who'd lectured about knowing one's place now pressed their foreheads to the marble Serafina had once polished. Damon leaned close, his lips brushing her ear. "Say the word, and we leave this place. You never have to see them again." Serafina placed her hand over her stomach, feeling the baby move beneath her palm. She thought about the girl she'd been, invisible, frightened, convinced she deserved nothing. Then she thought about who she was becoming, a mother, a queen, a woman who'd survived falling and found wings. "No," she said softly, her voice steady. "They need to see what they threw away. They need to remember that the woman they treated like garbage carries the future of this realm." She stepped forward, and the crowd flinched. "Rise," Serafina said, her voice clear and commanding. "And remember this moment every time you're tempted to judge someone by their status rather than their worth." Damon's pride radiated through their bond as he took her hand, raising it high. The Omega had become queen, and the Empire would never forget.